So this story really starts with my dad. And my dad grew up in a third world country in Africa. And he grew up rather poor, which is typical of third world countries in Africa. And since he grew up poor, he didn't have a lot, and he felt like there were a lot of things that he wished he could have had that he didn't. And my father went against the grain, and he is one of the few in his family who went ahead and got a college education, and he's doing pretty well for himself. And so I grew up in a much more fortunate situation. I was born and raised in a first world country, and growing up, my father loved buying me and my siblings things all of the time. And the reason why he loved buying me and my siblings things all the time is because he felt that while he was growing up, he had a lack that he didn't want his kids to experience. And so throughout my childhood, my dad would always come home with, a new shirt or a new pair of jeans or some new shoes. And because he really liked clothing and accessories, and these were things that brought him joy to buy, he would, buy that for me and my siblings. And ever since I was a kid, I knew that the right way to handle that situation is to thank my father, say, "Thank you so much, Dad. I really love it and it's great." And, I'd put it in my closet. And, over time, my closet got more and more and more full. Now, I grew up kind of differently than my father. And, the kind of ways that I grew up and the kind of things that I enjoy are a bit different. I'm a lot more heady, and I like books and I like music. And, I used to consume music a lot and read a lot. And I was more interested in like these really, really heady, abstract things that you can't really touch, you can't smell, you can't taste. It's nothing in the material world. I was in my head all the time. I'm still in my head all the time, right? But as a kid, this was definitely true. And so I was more into those sorts of things. And so I never really had this propensity to really enjoy the things that he enjoyed as much. I wore some clothes, but I really didn't really care. Even till today, I don't really care, what kind of clothes I wear. And right now, my closet is 90% white shirts, just white shirts, a few hoodies, a couple pair of basketball shorts, and a pair or two of jeans. And, I'm rather minimal. I've always been rather minimal. And so I never really found myself playing video games for the fashion. And it doesn't matter what game it is. It doesn't matter if it was World of Warcraft. I was never really one to care much about transmog or any other game where you have to, pay attention to accessories or the things you wear or the things you make. This isn't something that really never really interested me in video games before. And so, with that being the case, I also consider myself to be rather open to experience, and I like to experience a wide array of things. And I am now in the end game in Final Fantasy 14, and since I'm in the end game, I want to see everything that it has to offer. And I have friends who are interested in various things. I have friends that I'll go and raid Savage with. I have friends that I'll go back and watch some story stuff with because they like story. And I have friends who are really into G posing, and I'll spend time G posing with them. And I enjoy all of these activities, and I enjoy time with all of my different varying friends because I like trying a lot of new things and I like doing a wide array of things. And so we got to a point where I was like, okay, there is part of the game that a lot of people even say is essentially the end game that you haven't touched, that you really haven't gotten into. And that's, of course, glamour. And I would wear the Scion set, and that's about all I had. And I'm like, well, I want to experience this part of the game. I typically don't engage in this, whether in real life or in gaming, but I want to see what this is. I want to see what it's like. I want to, have this experience of farming glam and getting glam and paying attention to my glam and putting sets together and all of that. And so I went ahead and I went to eorzeacollection.com. I think it's ff14.eorzeacollection.com, where everyone posts their glams and people can, heart their glams and all of the sets are available. And I went ahead and I sorted by the job that I was playing, which was Summoner. And, I had Summoner leveled up at 290. I had Black Mage leveled up to 90. And I had Sage at about 81, 82. And I had Reaper around 81 and 82. But I main Sage. So I picked Sage and I filtered by Sage. And almost the whole first page of results was all for female characters. And I have a male character, right? And so this was kind of an issue for me. And then I kept scrolling and I looked through the glams for guys and I personally didn't like them. They weren't to my taste, they weren't to my style. And so this, created a predicament for me. It's like, well, I want to get into this part of the end game, but I don't really like how these glamours look on guys, at least not for Summoner. And so, of course, I went ahead. I got myself a Fantasia. I made a Femme Miko. I got a name change to match the Miko. And I went ahead and I started planning my glams. I started planning all of my sets. And what ended up happening is I started disassociating from my character. Whereas I'd run around in Final Fantasy XIV and say, I this, I that, I started saying she this or hers, referring to my character. And I started noticing this subtle disassociation with my character. And this was something that was really interesting to observe. And, having talked to a wide variety of people in Final Fantasy XIV, what I have come to realize is that so many people do play the game to be able to express themselves and to create either an idealized version of themselves or, a version of themselves that they can relate to, that they can see themselves as. Now, do some people play it, from a third party perspective and, see this as a separate character from who they are? Yeah. And that's exactly how I started feeling when I, did a Fantasia into a Miko. But, this kind of wasn't something that I was enjoying as much. It was cool for a little bit to go ahead and form glam for her. But I didn't like, the way that people were treating me in game. It was very different than how I'm used to being treated, which was also very interesting to observe. Just being, someone who Fantasia'd a lot of people that I'd run into, whether, in raids or otherwise, would treat me differently. They would absolutely treat me differently than when I was a hire. And, I didn't like it. I didn't like it. And so what I did was I sighed because I knew that I had to spend yet again more money to Fantasia back into a Highlander again and to get a name change again. And, because I want to go ahead and go into the end game with my new character or my new Fantasia character, I also boosted Dark Knight. And the reason I boosted Dark Knight is because Dark Knight, in my opinion, has the very best by a long shot. It's not even close. The best glams for males in the game. And I realized that for casters and healers, I think the glams for females typically look better. But for plate wearers, for tanks, the male glam typically looks better. And that's just my opinion, of course, right? And of all of the plate wearers, of all of the tanks, I thought Dark Knight looked the best. And so, I crossed my fingers and I hoped that I would like the Dark Knight gameplay. It's maybe a little bit foolish of me. And I boosted Dark Knight. And don't worry, I know, I've heard that the Dark Knight questline is phenomenal. I do plan on going ahead and playing it in New Game Plus, right? And I'm excited to do so. And so I went ahead and I did this, and turned out that I really did love the gameplay. I loved the skills. I liked what they were called, how they were named, how they looked. I loved the glam. I loved everything about it. And this got me more engaged with my character again. And I tried this time, after realizing how much I personally really did enjoy seeing myself as my character, I made a Highlander, about my height, bald, the whole 9 yards, right? I tried to make him look as much like me as possible, and I've been having so much fun doing it, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I already went ahead, and the base glam that I got for, even boosting was so good looking to me. And my friend helped me get the Garo set from PvP, and I got the Shadowbringer set, and I have a few sets, and I can't wait to get to level 90, so I can then go ahead and start farming out other pieces and other sets for my new Dark Knight. And that is the story of how I finally learned to relax and love glamour. And that's all I had to say for this video. We'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.